In this video, we're going to talk about shadow work. Hello and welcome to this week's video on shadow work, which is going to help you have emotional mastery, especially if you're a person in a leadership role, such as in the family, at work, in your business, or in a community. If you're the one who people listen to, then you're the one who also notices that you feel so responsible for everybody. Now, this work is going to help you transform and let go of some of the unwanted burden that you might be carrying on yourself, which might be blocking your success. So follow on till the end, till I share with you my steps on how to do shadow work. Hey, if you're new to the channel, I'm Supriya. I'm a self-mastery coach and the founder of Seva Academy, a school for sheroes to help them lead with ease and confidence in life and business. Every month, I run a free group coaching, aka or webinar, on a topic that has a meaning toward moving you forward in life or in an area of your life that might not be working out for you currently. So this month's topic is goal setting formula, which has been a hot topic in most of my conversations with clients and friends this year because we've just finished a pandemic and we're integrating back into real life, and we are having to figure out so many things all at once in this new year. So this goal setting formula is going to help you notice all the changes in your life and how to move forward, setting realistic, smart goals. And no, we won't be doing SMART goals. We will be looking at how to make sure our goals are true for us. So if you're interested in attending that free group coaching session, please see the link in the description box below to check it out, and do make sure you register so even if you can't attend, you might be able to access the replay. All right, my friends, so let's get started with this week's video. Have you heard of the quote, "What you resist persists"? Well, today I want to tell you a story about what I had a really hard time accepting. Taught me a great deal about how I could upgrade myself by working on that resistance. A story that I was really connected to with this topic is the time that I met who I thought was a soulmate of mine. And when we started being in a relationship, I found that his definition of being in a serious relationship was very different to mine. What happened was he would always be traveling and would hardly contact me. And me, even though my life was busy and I always had my own things to manage, I felt that the distance was too much and he expected too much from me, considering he didn't really spend any time in the relationship that, helped develop the relationship. Now, I'm not saying I'm right and he's wrong. However, my experience was teaching me all the things that I never want in my relationships, especially in a romantic relationship. So for me, how that impacted my life was that it kept me in a resistance space where I felt like, well, I really need to let him know what the problem is here, and I'm not going to want to change my way just to be in this relationship. So ultimately, what I learned about this is that my resistance actually made matters worse for me instead of being able to just let the relationship go. Instead, what happened was we actually ended up going back and forth, and whenever we met, he would justify his absence and I would accept it, but not truly feeling what I was going through kept me in sort of a push and pull situation for a couple of years. Ultimately, I realized what I don't want is to move away from my resistance, but I want to move toward the expanded version of me, which is actually realize what this is teaching me and then integrate that to up-level myself. I ended up breaking it off in the end, despite not really knowing how to deal with my emotions, but I just knew that what I was feeling was too hard to handle for me at that time. So I broke it up thinking that no, this doesn't suit me, it's still misaligned to me, and this relationship doesn't define as a steady relationship for me. So what is shadow work? So the story that I just used with you, this is about the time where I just felt like, man, there was so much resistance in me to even accept that breakup, Like at first I have good reason to break it off, because to me that doesn't qualify as a kind of relationship that really nourished me. But when I broke it off, his response really, affected me to go, well, did I do the right thing? And that also kept me in a loop of thought that I was never able to reach a solid understanding on until I found this book by Dr. Deepak Chopra called The Shadow Effect. And in The Shadow Effect, he talks about shadow work, or shadow, to be the part of ourselves that we haven't accepted yet. So ultimately, if we were to use my story, the case study, as a case study, well, Deepak Chopra would say that, the part of my experience that I wasn't able to accept was actually a part of me that I had to accept in order to be able to move on, so that I didn't, recreate that situation again. Now, can you see how subtle that is? It's not tangible. It's really emotional work that you have to kind of create space for, to have a look at and see it objectively, because it was so easy for me to tune into what was feeling bad at the time and make a decision to break it off. Not that that was incorrect. Yes, the relationship wasn't the right thing for me. However, I wasn't accepting the fact that he was like this and I was like this, and that's why we couldn't move forward on the relationship. So that was a part of me that I had to learn to accept through shadow work. These parts of ourselves are like our polarities. So in this case, the polarities were that me, I wanted more closeness. Him, he was okay with not having closeness. Like this story I just shared, I couldn't accept that he liked so much space and time apart and expect a close relationship. Whereas for me, a close relationship meant that we actually saw each other at least once. And I got clear about what a close relationship meant for me. And that's what it would look like, that we at least saw each other once a week. And if we couldn't, at least we would make a supplementary plan to make sure that happened. I couldn't accept that opposite polarity of mine, that, well, we wouldn't talk. We wouldn't even, make a definite plan. So everything was always up in the air. And, I couldn't accept that. So when I dug a little bit deeper, I noticed that I wasn't feeling good about this uncertainty of not knowing when I would see him next. And that brought up a lot of turmoil within me. It triggered a lot of unsafety within me, thinking, well, if in a close relationship, these are the feelings that are triggered, then I don't want to be in it. So the only way through that resistance caused by my judgment of it was to process what was going on for me. So when I looked deep within, I looked back at the story of origin for me of this sort of a situation was my parents had separated and I never knew when I would see my father again. And so that anxiety got triggered by this behavior of this guy that I was dating. And so for me, that was more to do with what emotions I hadn't processed from my childhood, more than about this relationship. And the fact that I couldn't accept my decision of breaking up, that meant that there was definitely something else in the background that I needed to look at. So ultimately, after I did my shadow work process, that's when I was able to release that story from my consciousness and made peace with my own decision to break it up. And I also ended up losing attraction for such people who liked distance, who were okay with having friendships, relationships without having that much involvement. So, I mean, there are names for these kinds of relationships. There's names like narcissism, codependence, etc. But there is a healthy boundary that most people can set to have their needs met and have their desires met. However, in my situation, I really had to learn how to repel those kinds of relationships because they were never healthy for me, according to what I really want in relationships. So I wanted to now bring it back to the process that I want to share with you, which is the shadow work process that I teach to my clients and I walk my clients through, because not everyone's story is the same as mine or that same story, but most of us have gone through many situations in our younger years. There is a model for this that I've learned as well, which is, in the formative years, there's a lot of information that came through experience, which as children we weren't able to process correctly and we gave meaning to. However, when we grow up as an adult, things that happen that trigger those emotions, we have to be willing to process those unprocessed emotions to be able to upgrade our stories in life. How am I doing here? Drop it in the comments box if this is something that you're resonating with, or what are the thoughts that are coming up for you. Let me know. Before I move into the how-to, I just want to, reiterate why this is so important. Is that we've all heard of the saying, what we resist persists. Now, you've also heard of the saying, how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if we are resisting something in a certain area of life and we have this, pending or hidden or suppressed, repressed, these problems will exist. They'll repeat until we actually go deep within and look at the polarity that we're not accepting about our story. This has happened in my financial life, romantic life, health, career, business, in every area in some form or another. And that is what this book goes into about the shadow effect, which is, we most of the times we do realize this in our relationships, be it with our partners or friends or, colleagues, etc. But there is this message, this overarching message, which is where there is good, there is also bad. And just because we value good doesn't mean we just disown the bad, because the bad and good both exist within us. It's just what we have prioritized and given more space to is what shadow work is all about, which is to create that balance and neutrality so that we don't just keep attracting bad to remind us that we're not accepting of that. Instead, learning to really deeply accept within ourselves that both are a part of our living, of ourselves, we're not separate from it, and then, experience our own iterations of that in our life stories. I hope I've done an okay job. So if none of this makes sense, hey, look up the book that I shared about. It's The Shadow Effect by Dr. Deepak Chopra. He goes into this very well. And by the way, it was co-authored by Marianne Williamson and Debbie Ford. Let's go into how to do shadow work. Now, of course, this is deep work and it is a bigger framework than what I'm going to share with you, because this is something that's part of our self-mastery program, but this is work that you can get started on your own, because until you are actually aware, hey, how can you even look for an answer or solution, right? So just like me, there was this feeling of like disownership or judgment or anger or resentment or something that was, giving you fuel for distraction or compulsions, or just not being able to accept something about your life or any part of your life, then there is a need for you to do this work. And this is the work, when you do it, your life gets upgraded tenfold. There are 6 steps at Seva, right? 6 steps being that step number 1, awareness of the judgment that you have currently. Step number 2, recalling the story of origin. Step number 3, processing the emotion. Step number 4, forgiving. Step number 5, you must reassign the beliefs. And step number 6 is come up with new boundaries to move forward in life. Shall we go a little bit into the first 3 steps, because I believe you are able to do this on your own as soon as you get off this video, because this is eclipse season, as you heard me say in my last video, and in this season of our planetary movements and all of that, there are opportunities for great change. This one thing you're resisting could be, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a person, it could be a resistance that's sitting within you, because something in you is showing up saying, hey, I'm separate to that, I'm different to that. That is the shadow effect. So we all have it, and as long as we can recognize it, then we can start doing this work right away. So with step number 1, you've got awareness of judgment. Without self-awareness and awareness that you are judging something, there is hardly any scope for healing and moving into asking different questions, isn't it? So often in life, what we're doing is we're moving through life saying, I prefer this, I don't prefer that. I prefer this, I don't prefer that. The world is full of duality. So in this duality, be aware of what you prefer and what you don't, and how much intensity or charge do you put behind what you like and what you don't like. So just having that awareness in itself is a great deal of power that you have over a lot of people. So that's step number 1. And if you don't have that, I suggest this video on the left-hand side corner to start your seated practice of being still with yourself to increase your ability to become more self-aware. It's just 5 minutes. I guide you to sit with me for 5 minutes. It's time-stamped, and you just sit daily. Give yourself a challenge to do this like for 21 days and see the result for yourself. Awareness of judgment is really important, because especially when we have those feelings brew up and we feel like a victim of someone else's wrongdoing, or we feel like, even something as small as the weather, if we judge the weather, there's definitely some charge to that, because it's influencing the way we are feeling. So a lot of my clients or people that I've spoken to would say, oh, I hate it when it's rainy and cloudy outside. Like, hate is a very strong word, firstly. Secondly, they actually have complained about feeling depressed on a day that is cloudy and rainy. So how do we actually accept that about ourselves, right? So that's the journey. You must first be aware of the fact that you are judging. Second thing, so if you'd like to get clear about judgments, there is a video in this corner about judging. So check that out as well. It might help you open up to the concept of how this works. Okay, step number 2 is going back to the story of origin. There is no one story, by the way, and that's why this work is ongoing. The more you do this work, the more stories of origin you'll find. Story of origin means that you just have to sit with that feeling, you're feeling like whatever you can't accept, and you just ask yourself, what is this about? And when you ask yourself, what is this really about? Then automatically, if you allow yourself to go there, you can access memories of when you felt this first. And trust yourself to tap into what memory comes up. And if you can go even before that, go for it and write them all down. These stories of origin really matter because they're the parts of ourselves that we have forgotten about. Our childhood memories are not something we actually recall that often. So they are memories that only when we are consciously going back and tapping into the subconscious and unconscious memories, then we are looking at, what is really the matter. An example was for me, as I shared earlier, when that person that I was in a relationship with, and we were mutually exclusive. To him, this was defined as a serious relationship, but he didn't feel like he had to actually physically show up or have a conversation around it, which I found very weird in my world. So in this case, the story of origin that I could recall, who was that person in my life in prior to this memory? Who was that in my life? Oh, it was my father, because when your parents split up, you don't know when you're going to see your other parent unless there's an agreement, unless they've shared with you when exactly you're going to see your parents. So, and I actually don't have any reservations to not be sharing this because it's common knowledge in my circles, and I don't mind using this story as content for you to see that, there is a story of origin for most. So in the nature of my upbringing, that was something that really affected me, that really made me feel angry, resentful, and unsafe. That, hey, if this man cares for me, why don't I know when I'm going to see him next? But obviously we were in different countries and everything like that. Step number 3 is processing the emotions. When you have felt that there is an emotion there about that story of origin, write it all down. And once you have it there on paper, that's great. But then allow yourself to sit with those emotions, own them. So there's 4 steps to processing emotions, and that is, firstly, feel where it's in your body. Second, understand what that emotion is, as in, what does it mean to you? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it whatever that is for you? And then allow yourself to accept it, that it's in your body. That's acceptance, and that is your story. And then lastly, let it be, let it go, let it evaporate. That is you letting the emotion go. So the next 3 steps would be forgiveness, reassigning new beliefs, and setting new boundaries. So as you can see, the next steps just go into more of defining what's happening next. But I believe that you can get started on what's happening now right away, because you must, just like anybody that's living, have resistance in you. And that's something that you can relieve yourself from right away. And that's shadow work. Well, what are some of the other benefits of shadow work? Can you put it in the comments below about what some of the other benefits of doing shadow work might be? Because I'm sure the audience would love to hear about what your thoughts are on this topic, and I would too also like to learn what it might mean for you to be able to let go of the resistance that you have currently within. Some of my clients have shared the resistance that's in them is actually stopping them from going for their goals, which if they don't overcome, then will mean that they'll stop being that person in other people's lives. Like, they're trying to be a role model to others, but what's stopping them from pursuing their own leadership and their own success, which will help them feel proud and have better self-esteem, that self-worth, what's stopping them is this resistance, right? There are judgments that we all have, and shadow work really takes us into them. So feel free to replay this video, revisit the notes, and take some notes and steps that I've shared with you to start the work, and reach out anytime you want. So to summarize today's video, what we went through today was resistance makes the problem persist, and it could be blocking your success. Your judgments are clues to what you need to accept to move through in life so you can start life fresh. You can start the journey with the guidance that I've given you in this video, but do seek professional help like a therapist or a coach if you get stuck. And read the book if you feel called to. So in our self-mastery programs, this is a lot of the work that we do to help women leaders overcome what's stopping them in their tracks, to overcome that inner resistance toward moving through the problem instead of staying stuck behind the problem. It's not as scary as you think, because ultimately think about the level of relationships or level of experiences that not processing it is giving you and bringing in your life. Like, think about if I didn't process and do my shadow work and accept the fact that there's a part of me that loves freedom, that doesn't want the structure. That part I had to accept even in the relationship domain. Then I may not be able to move forward in my life, and I might keep attracting people like that that'll keep me stuck in the same level of problems. Fortunately, we are also in a day and age of, technology, so we're just a call and email away. So make sure you contact us if you need any help or you have some questions that you'd like to discuss in person. Feel free to book in a clarity session where you have access to me and I can answer any questions you might have there. I have no problems if you bring them with you there. Your goal now is to show up 100%, right? And so you might think your goals are different to those problems, but it's not. What is in your way is also the way, like Remy Pearson, my mentor, says. So let me know what you thought of this video inside, and like, share, subscribe, please. Thank you so much for being here and supporting the channel. I really love seeing the likes and the hearts and the comments, because it all makes a difference to me that you actually resonate with it and you're finding it helpful. And do share it with your friends or family that might find this content useful too. Thank you so much. Until next week, I'll look forward to hearing from you, and see you next week at the next video.